Hi all, welcome to Signal, and welcome to the last panel for the day. Hope you all enjoyed the session. So I'm Madhu Mathialagan. At work, I'm a senior product manager at Twilio. As a female, I wear many roles. I'm a daughter to my mom. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. And I also friend and colleague to my colleagues at work. Well, we are all living in an interesting time of our life, right? All the Me Too movements give us all equal pay and everything, and all of those things are working. Look at the stats, right? There are stats which tells us that women are participating in multiple decision-making things, and look at it in our house, purchases, or when it comes to home furnishing equipments, or even booking vacations, we are participating more than 90%. Awesome, great. Now, also when it comes to automobiles, like buying cars, women are participating about like 60%, working well, right? With that in mind, let's go to the business side of it. Can you raise hands? All the three women up there, if you know them by name and what do they do? Can you, whoever knows it, can you raise your hands, please? Okay, just the second one, okay. Okay, I see some people, okay, wow, good. So this is what we are here to talk about. When it comes to executives, when it comes to C-levels, and when it comes to business, executives are far, far less. And on the left, we have Safra Katz. She is a co-CEO. Sheryl Sandberg. She is COO of Facebook. And Susan, who is the CEO of YouTube, right? Why we don't know them? Interesting, huh? We participate in many other things, but still we don't know these folks. Though you have these kind of scenarios, I do have some positive news for all of you. In Twilio, we still have some great influential personalities who's going to join us for the panel, who's going to tell us their success stories, how did they do it, and what we can learn from them. Like all of you, I'm also going to sit and enjoy the panel and learn a lot from them. So without much further ado, let's call our panelists. Sure. Okay, thanks everyone. Would you mind just going from left to right, like introduce yourself?
Sounds good. I'm Yulia Gorbanova. I'll just continue the trend. I am a daughter, a mother, a colleague, a sister, and a friend.
Great.
Great. My name is Liz Yi, and going along with that, I'm a friend, a colleague, a sister, a daughter, a partner, my boyfriend.
Cool.
Hi, this is Elisa Belagamba, and I am a mother, a daughter, a wife, friend, a colleague. In a previous life, I was a professional piano.
Ooh.
Wow. I'm Jen Kessler, and I am also a daughter, which we all are, I guess, except for. And Liz and I came from the SendGrid acquisition.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Ben, product manager at Twilio. I feel like the four of you could just copy and cheat off of Madhu's introduction. I'm a son, a husband, a father, a dog owner, a friend, colleague, and thanks for having me on this panel.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so first question. By the way, guys, so if you are interested in asking more questions other than what we are discussing, feel free to do it. You can go to slido.com, or you can just talk from here. If you want to do it anonymous, go to slido.com. The code is WIP, Women in Product. You can ask questions there, or feel free to have a mic and then ask us the question. Feel free to interrupt us. It's going to be a two-way session for all of us. So Yulia and Jen, if I understand right, both of you are like senior directors, and can you tell us what's your secret sauces? How did you get here? We don't have much of role models, and so you are, okay.
I guess I can start. I think most importantly, to know that there is no one path and there's no one way to get there, or where there even is. I would say that for me, what worked is to be a little brave, a little more brave, put yourself out there. Sometimes pick up things, in professional environment I mean, pick up things that maybe are not that glamorous, and show your perseverance and persistence, I guess, and get things done. And I think another part of that, besides you, there's got to be people that vouch for you or see what you do and understand and support you. That would be my short answer.
Yeah, I think to start, I couldn't agree more. I think having supportive managers who are willing to advocate, have been willing to advocate for me since the beginning of my career has been extremely helpful. I started out in a completely different world. I started out in quantitative finance, and then after business school, started a company, and then, so I did math in undergrad, then I worked in quantitative finance, then I went to business school, then I started a company in the Bay Area and did Y Combinator, and that was the first time in my life that I ever felt sexism, that I ever felt like it was different being a woman, which was really interesting because everything before had really been male-dominated. And so when I look back at it, I really think it was just all about, like Yulia said, having really supportive managers who were willing to advocate for me and who made it sort of a non-issue that I was a woman, and I think that that was really incredible. I think the other thing that's just really important is not being afraid to ask questions until you understand. You can't expect yourself to make good decisions unless you have all the information and you're willing to understand. And I think especially in product, when our goal is to build something that people are going to use and they're going to love, you can't stop until you fully get it. And if you're afraid of sounding stupid, then there's no way you're going to ask enough questions to understand and build good products. I think that combined with the supportive managers has been the most important thing for me.
Awesome, thank you. Hey, Liz and Alyssa, can you share, like, who was your role model and how did you get here? What's your background and what are some challenges that you have faced and how did you actually overcome it? Is there anything that you have applied?
Yeah, I can start. So my mom is a great role model for me, and a lot of my career decisions have been largely because I've had really great talks with her about what I want out of my career. And my mom actually was a saleswoman for IBM, and that's where I went right out of college. I thought it was a really great way to not only learn how to understand products, but also position them in a way that helps other people understand how it works. Oh no. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my mom is one of my greatest role models, and in terms of challenges, actually, a story back when I started at IBM was really trying to understand how to fit into a large corporation. And oftentimes when you are at a big company, you do feel like you have to fit a mold. And stereotype or not, a lot of people in my starting class were super into football. Like, they would talk about it in the elevators, and for a while I felt like I need to understand this in order to fit in. And I tried watching football for a little bit, and I realized, this really isn't my thing. What are other things that I'm super interested in where I can relate to other people as well? And so I think in terms of challenges, you don't necessarily have to fit the mold of what you think people would want you in. You can just try to find something that already works really well for you and see if you can share that with other people.
Sure. Thank you. Alyssa?
Yes, hi. So to repeat your question, you asked 4 or 5 questions at the same time, but I will give you a little bit more of my background, how I got to product management and what were my challenges along the way.
Sure.
So I started as a software engineer and straight out of graduation school, and soon I really realized something was missing to make me happy, and that was the why I was coding, why I was writing those pieces of code. And soon I realized, I really wanted to talk to customers, doing something around business. I couldn't really even name the job role I wanted to take, but I had very clear what I wanted to do. And soon I realized that was product management. The problem of coming from like a very technical background to product management or some more customer-facing business type of jobs is that no one really wants to give you the first chance if you don't want to, if you don't have experience, right? So my way to overcome that was, first of all, show my eagerness and my willingness to learn and be humble and, about that, and then volunteering my free time to do some like extra projects that would allow me to learn, blending with new teams that I wouldn't necessarily know. And through that, I got the trust of the team, and like really naturally, I got hired in new positions. And then I went into business school to really fill my business gaps, and from there, it was really easy to get into product management. So bottom line from this story is like, I think what works really well for your career is really to find your passion, and then when you find your passion, grit comes, right? And then you work harder, you can work extra time because it becomes really your mission, your passion. And who's my role model? I have had a lot of different role models across my journey. But I think the most useful piece of advice that I got, that I'm still practicing on it, is to always look for feedback. And mostly the bad feedback. They're painful, and they're super painful. As a woman, I don't want to generalize, it's like, you tend to take things really personally. Like, oh, like then I'm bad all over. Like you get one bad feedback that you're absolutely bad at everything, right? But as you exercise to get bad feedback, first of all, you get awareness of your blind spots. And your blind spots is what are holding you back to get better, right? To get into your next level. And put it that way. The sooner you know these bad things you're doing, the faster you fix them. So instead of doing it like many times, you just do it once and you move over, right? And over time, you take them like much more casually, and people are even more willing to give you feedback. So I found that like a big accelerator to my growth.
That's a good one. Thank you. We have a lot of questions coming up in Slido 2. One of the questions is, how do you advance your product career and your current team with a manager who does not have or come from product experience? Ben, do you want to take this question?
So how does you advance your career when you with a manager with not a product-minded manager?
Right.
So I'll try to give it with a women in product bent to it. I think it's I gotta be careful, right, on stage. Being the male participant on this panel, to not speak in generalizations. And I was really pleased to be asked to participate here to give my perspective as someone who manages both male and female product managers. And I think the thing that I see a lot about being in product is that there's no. It's not something that you want to be when you're a kid, right? No one's like, I want to be a product manager when I grow up, right? It's just like not a career that we think about as being like a job, like a doctor or a lawyer, right? It's people come to it from all different angles, and the path that we see in the Bay Area, like the prototype we see most commonly is engineer turned product manager, right? I think that's the number one like resume that I read, and that because of the male-dominated engineering sort of what's the word ecosystem world, like job, mostly men in engineering. That's predominantly the path that we see, and what we more often see is women coming to product from a broader range of areas, right? Whether that's sales for Liz, or Elisa, who started in engineering, but then really brought her marketing and business school acumen to product, right? And I think that's the pattern that I've watched over and over again, is coming from a sales or a marketing or a business perspective and bringing that to the role. And I'll get to the question in a moment, which is, bringing those unique qualities to the discipline of products. Product is everything, right? It's like, what do you do as a product manager, right? I'm sure you've all explained it to your parents and they have no idea what it is you do, right? It's worse than engineering, right? Engineering, at least they think you fix the printer, right? Like product managers, like have no idea what we do. So understanding like what is the unique quality that you, female or male, are bringing to the product role, doubling down on that. And that is like what I would say is what your manager needs to understand and the most valuable thing you can bring. And it's going to be different for everyone, whether that's a very technical background, that's, hey, here, I can write great business plans, oh, I can drive a product, I can run my sprints, my Jiras like really well. What is the unique thing? The customer empathy, because I came from a sales engineering or customer support background. How do you bring that to the role and then sort of make your manager appreciate that's what it is you're bringing?
Can I add something?
Sure.
I think when I think about someone not being product minded, I'm not exactly sure what the person meant by this question, but I think when I think about building products, there's no better way to convince people to build something than by showing them that it's what customers want. And I think that if someone's not product minded, whatever that means, just even on your product journey, just talk to customers, understand what they're doing, understand what their current patterns are, more specifically, understand what their workarounds are, and understand how they're going through their days. And then if you understand the customer, you understand what they want, you could bring that proof and you can kind of share that understanding with your manager or the people around you, then I think it's a lot easier to bring people along and to help them support you in building products.
Can I add something
Sure.
to the story? I've actually had maybe even funny example. I was reporting to someone who's like old school, let me put it this way, like old school. And maybe in the family of people who like product manager, engineer, marketing, I don't know. And we ended up, well, first of all, one thing that helped me at that situation is you gotta know what keeps your manager up at night. And maybe it's applicable more for a bigger company, but there are either it's customer problems or organizational problems, or I don't know, maybe it's not problems at all, but what is that thing that keeps them up at night? That's one. And another thing is, I guess it's more along what Ben was saying, is like, what is additive you can add to that situation? Because as a product manager, you are a leader. You're a leader of something, of product, of group of people, of initiative, of whatever. So what is that is missing and you can add and you can step into that role? And that with that particular manager, we kind of had this phrase going on that I would tell him like, Bill, you just have to show up and be proud. And that was sort of the phrase that we kept, because he was managing a lot of people, but something that your manager can show up and be proud. I'm not saying the manager doesn't need to give input, but ultimately, whatever makes your manager proud is your customer successful. Like all of this ultimately culminates in one place.
Nice. Like to add on to that, right? Like, so there was one question also. What skills are worth learning early on in your career to become a product manager eventually? Is there even like one skill? Like one thing that right away pops up in my mind is when you are a product manager, you manage the team who is not directly reporting to you. But you have to be influential so that people follow you. If you're not influential, then you're not a leader, right? So there is something there. So somebody would like to shed light on it? Or please go ahead.
I would say like one of the biggest things, and this is quite product specific, but like figuring out what is your style for making decisions. Because when you're in a product role, you're making decisions every single day. Like where should I spend my time? How should I work with my engineering team? And for some people, they need to have X amount of data in order to feel really comfortable making decisions. Other people can go on less than that, but really understanding like what is your personal style and what's your comfort level for making decisions. If you stay true to that, I think it'll really help you in a role like product, because then anytime you do feel unsure about like, this is why I'm deciding the way it is, you can always go back to like whatever your internal framework is and say, you know what, I still need to gather a little bit of information. Or you could go back to your framework and be like, you know what, I've done all the pieces necessary that I need in order to make a decision, and I feel comfortable with that and go forward.
And then another thing is like the 360-degree feedback is kind of like understanding your blind spot. So knowing your blind spot really helps. So understanding that and then working on that skill set would be really helpful. So coming from your peers or your managers, your mentors, is like one thing I found is I have a lot of mentors that helps me going because everybody have different styles and you can learn and pick up things from different ones. So that is one thing that I follow in my career as such.
If I can add something on
Sure.
feedback, what worked for me really well, that actually was
Ben's, yeah.
that after every presentation, after every deliverable, just ask somebody in the room that you trust, really casually, maybe in private, hey, do
Right.
you have any feedback? Or what would you do better? Because if you have any feedback, they will always say, oh, you did a great job, and like try to be maybe a little bit more specific and like show that you really value the feedback, because it's not always easy to give bad feedback.
Right.
Right.
Awesome.
And I just want to touch on that real quick. So getting feedback is obviously good, but you need to follow through and do something with that. And one of the best ways that you can help yourself actually act on that feedback is to share that with other people. So if we're on the same team, I might say, hey, Yulia, like, I'm really trying to improve in this area. And so by me telling you, it's not only a way for there to be accountability, but also if you have oversight into other projects going on where I can pick up a skill in that area, then you can think of me, or you can think of whoever the person is and say, you know what, this person has been looking to pick up skills or improve in this area. And so it helps you actually take action on that.
Cool. And another question from our audience is, what is your biggest challenge you face by being a woman in product management? Yulia, you're smiling, you have.
Where do I start? Well, I think this is personal, but I usually think that I'm responsible for everything, which is typically not true. But I feel, I guess, apologetic when things don't work out, even though if it wasn't my, I guess, responsibility. I think I don't know if we're gonna touch on the mother subject, but
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Balancing that maybe was challenging a few years more than now, and I guess challenges.
Yeah.
And another thing, and there's been books written about that, but still, like I always feel that I don't know enough. I am not probably the best person to do this or make a decision on that, and this hesitation that I think I try to overcome daily.
So as a managers, like, do you feel anything that women is particularly doing that you see a pattern or?
What women are doing or the last question?
Challenges.
For women or for myself? Or
For women in product management.
So I think one of the things, so I'll start with sort of myself because I think it's relevant for our keynote speaker tomorrow, Mindy Kaling. I think that one of the things about Mindy Kaling that I think is so amazing, which I really learned from, which is why I'm so excited that she's here tomorrow, is she is completely goofy and feminine and herself, and she's still a badass. And I think that early on in my career, I really felt like I had to just be serious and quiet and hide my personality and just be a work robot almost. And that I had to separate my personality from the person that I brought to work. And I think I thought that that's what I needed to be successful because that was how I fit in. Granted, it was all men. And I think over time, and especially being at SendGrid has really helped me with this, is I just am myself at work. One of my really good friends started at SendGrid after I was there, and he was just like, wow, he's like, you are literally the exact same person out of work and in work. And I think that being my whole self and not feeling like I had to constantly like be aware of who I was, I think that kind of overcoming that challenge and being able to just show up as myself has been really has been really helpful. And for the people on my team, because I have men and women, I think one of the things is that women really tend, I've seen scenarios where women often need to have a huge, like 100% certainty and 100% confidence and 100% of the information before having the confidence to move forward with something. And I've seen men move forward with not 100% of information. And that's not to say about men. I mean, we have to move forward in our jobs as product managers without 100% information. That's never going to exist.
Right.
And so I think that the real challenge is learning how to trust yourself and trust your gut and being able to move forward and make those decisions with incomplete information.
Great.
Can I just add something? And I think just asking for what you want or telling your managers or I don't know, that was another big thing, maybe a little bit culturally for me as well. But I remember having this conversation with my husband, but I deserve this and I've worked for it and why is it not happening? And he's like, have you asked? I'm like, don't they see? Well, you know, don't leave anything for interpretation. Just go and ask. Right?
Yeah. So true. Yeah. Agreed. Ben, would you like to shed light on? Let me just change the question a little bit to say that you do manage people and you have both men and women in your teams. Do you see a pattern there? Is there anything that you see that other men who are managing them, or like the women and the men when they are working, like even for you, like how is it different? Like on your one-on-ones, do you tell them that, hey, you are doing it, expose yourself, things like that? Can you shed some light there?
Yeah, I can give some examples. I think, Jen, you said something in your introduction where you talked about how you found your first manager for whom being a woman was a non-issue. And sometimes I think that is absolutely right. You're just a person, it is a non-issue. But sometimes there's a level of sensitivity and understanding that, hey, maybe everyone in the room doesn't look the same, and it actually does need to be, the word issue is too negative, right? We need to be cognizant and conscientious that people manage differently, they show up in rooms differently, they show up in meetings differently, they write differently. So there's that level of just awareness that I think is the most critical thing for a manager. I think there's times I've done that well, and there's times I've done that very poorly. It's hard, but that is the biggest thing to think about as a manager is how your words are being interpreted, how people are sitting in rooms, the language that people are using is a very gendered language. Do we need to go out of our way to make sure that every voice is properly heard?
Sure.
And the ambiguity sort of things you were talking about, making decisions without complete information, it's a really important part of product management. I recall a story in my role before Twilio. I remember leaving the company, and a female was taking my role, and sort of in like the parting when I was leaving, trying to explain to her the role, she's like, "How did you always know like what the answers were?" And I was like, I made it up all the time. And she was like, my God, but you were my boss. You were just making it up? I was like, yes, I was making it up. And she sent me a text message about 6 months later, and she was like, holy shit, I've been making it up too. And, and it's totally right, it totally works. And she was like so out of her comfort zone when she began, but then she realized like, oh, maybe there are times when we can make our intuition is good, and we can make those judgment calls, and we have to move the organization forward. And product is like the place where that like comes up the most, because we're just listening to customers, listening to sales, listening to everybody, and then we just have to make a call.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I think Ben brought up a really important point is like, as product managers, we're the ones making decisions. And if you're the one person in the room who looks different, who comes from a different background, you're likely going to have a different perspective often. Now, just because that perspective is different and just because you think something different of everyone else in the room, it doesn't mean it's wrong because it's 1 versus 5.
Yeah.
It might just be different because you come from a different background. Like, you might be the one that has the better insight into the customer. So don't worry about that. And don't let that kind of hold you back.
Just quickly really add to it. And even if your opinion is not it will trigger some other thoughts in the room. It's very important to put yourself out there and speak up.
Yeah, I think one thing I totally agree is speaking up is really important. As a personality, I'm not too shy to talk about things and then just say it, but there are a lot of, I wouldn't say generalize it as women, but I do see that like we hesitate a lot before we say things, and we have to be 100% right before you say it. Don't worry about it, and don't be too harsh on yourself. That is one thing I still do to myself. We should have that don't care attitude. So what? If that happened, yeah, mistake happens, you're human, right? So I think having that really helps, I guess. That is one thing I'm still learning. I'm not perfect at it. I'm still doing it. So moving on to the next question. What are techniques you use to bridge any gender management gaps, perceived or real? Gender management gaps.
I can answer that.
Sure.
So I have everyone on my team following the same procedure, basically. And I work with everybody on my team on self-advocacy. So not just the women, not just the men, but we work with everyone on self-advocacy. And we literally have we take the career development framework, so all the things that we're going to be evaluated on, and then I ask everyone for all of their accomplishments, literally list them for me in a spreadsheet. Get feedback from other people and have other people send it to me and tell me which competency they are sort of demonstrating with that skill. And it could be as simple as running a meeting or writing an email. It's really up to the individual person. But I find having everybody within that framework and also figuring out how to advocate for themselves really normalizes it.
Nice. Anyone would like to touch on it? We have a lot of questions. Okay, moving on to the next one. For women who are looking to find new roles, how do you screen for whether the workplace culture is inclusive?
I think
we are almost, we are already done. We are 1 minute over. Okay, so with that, we can't go too much. So I will ask everybody as a request, can you give like one advice for our audience? Like one word of advice or one sentence of advice, like what would you tell your younger self or people who are looking to join into product management or who are already in product management and moving on in different career and advancements or moving into some executive levels? Can you, from your background, could you please give some advice?
Start at that end.
Okay, start here, okay.
Okay, I'll start. So aside from overcoming all those challenges we talked about, I think one thing that helped me is to be your authentic self. And as simple as it sounds, somebody told me a while back that I have a brand. And I didn't know what it means. I literally had to look it up. What does it mean to have a brand? But I think your reputation, the way you approach things, you have your unique way. Don't be shy about it. Be conscious about it. In fact, use it to your advantage and be yourself and obviously solve customer problems.
Thank you, Yulia.
I'd say if you don't carve your own path or your own future, then someone or the company is going to do it for you. So do the best that you can to figure out what it is you want to do this year, next year, 5 years, whatever, and be an advocate for yourself and tell people where you want your path to go.
That's a good one, Liz.
It's a good point, and I actually will add on that. So if you're really clear on where you want to go in 5 years, let's say, a way I always found my next position, it wasn't really based on title or like what would be written in my business card, but more what I'm gonna learn in this new job. Is this gonna give me what I need to have for like my 5 years like career objective? Because then you can change company, or reorganization happens, titles don't mean so much if you don't really own your subject, if you're not really like so confident about what you know. So this is like the piece of advice I would give. And the second one is to always follow to find your mission and always to be true to that, because otherwise you're gonna be unhappy and you're gonna make wrong choices that brings you on the wrong path.
I'm going to say two, like Lisa. The first is, if there is somebody toxic at work and you can't find a way to overcome that yourself and not let them kind of interfere, remove yourself from the situation. There's really no reason to stay in a situation that's holding you back. That could be a person, it could be a situation. And I think the second, and this has been the most important thing for me, is find a group of friends. For me, it's a couple of women who you can be 100% open with about every single aspect of your life. And you can get feedback from, and you can talk to, because whenever anything happens, no matter what, you have a group of people who understand what's happening at work, what's happening at home, and they can just kind of help you find perspective and be there for you. And for me, that has been the most important thing.
Thank you. Ben?
I think listening to what customers are telling you, listening to what people around you are saying and how they describe their problems. And this is going to be very much like, how do you grow in product? It is listen to what people are saying, and they're just telling you exactly what you need to do. Right? This is less about like being in the right management environment or having the right, this is, to be successful in product is just listening and then internalizing that problem, right? And I don't say that like it's easy, right? It is incredibly hard, but if you just keep listening and listening and listening and shut up like I'm not doing, then you'll just hear what people want. And that's our job, is to hear what customers need and then figure out how to create it.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. With that, we will close this panel. Thank you so much for joining us today.